This is Jim McKeeth from the future of this podcast. This was recorded back in March, but for a variety of reasons didn't get edited and posted right away, which then led to it just kind of sitting around for a while, but wanted to finally share it. So just want to let you know that the dates are different because it was recorded in March. So comments about current events may seem out of place, but that's the reason for that. Also, this is the post losing my beard look, or in the video, you'll notice I do have the beard. I misplaced my beard in Brazil. Who knows what the future will hold, but for today, this is what I look like. I'm Jim McKeeth.
And I'm Marco Geuze.
I'm director of GDK USA and longtime developer advocate for Embarcadero. It's interesting, at one point I realized that I always have been a developer advocate even before working at Embarcadero.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do is figure something cool out about technology and then grab people and say, I have to tell you about this. And we're both Delphi MVPs.
Yes.
Longtime Delphi developers. Yep. Lots of fun.
Lots of history for Delphi.
Fun projects.
Yep.
So what version did you start with?
It was Turbo Pascal 5.5, I think, or 5. Certainly the blue background was there. So I think, and stayed a long time on Turbo Pascal. Mm-hmm. So I got involved in Delphi 3 or 4, I think. So I missed the first releases because I was still on Turbo Pascal.
Yeah.
Which was great.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great tool. Where did you start?
I was using Turbo Pascal 3 something. And then a couple different versions. I think I used 5 and 7.
Yeah.
Were the other versions I used.
Uh-huh.
And then I started Delphi 2. I've used Delphi 1 only retroactively.
Yeah.
I think if I used Delphi 2, it was just a little bit, but really Delphi 3 is where I really started using it a lot.
As I think a lot of people, we stayed for a long time on Delphi 5 and Delphi 7 before we moved to the newer versions, at least where I worked. So I think they even still have some programs in Delphi 7, which were really good versions, by the way.
That's something I think is interesting about Delphi. We talked a little bit last night at the Boise event about the backwards compatibility of Delphi.
Yeah.
But the other thing, it's really amazing how long applications built with Delphi just keep running.
Yeah.
Electron-based apps and other apps that are essentially written in JavaScript and then embedded in a desktop application, they have to be updated a lot. And that's a requirement because the Chrome browser's got so many security vulnerabilities that they keep patching.
Exactly.
And so there's a requirement, I don't know what it is, like every couple of weeks or something like that, you have to patch it. I saw somebody that made a tweet on this back when it was called Twitter about how they implemented the ability to support Xbox controllers through Chrome. Mm-hmm. So that means VS Code supports the Xbox controller. And that's one of those things we call a big attack surface.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last night we did the Delphi event here in Boise. I didn't get any pictures, unfortunately, but we had about 20 people there, which is about what I was estimating.
And the fun thing was you had old-time Delphi developers who used Delphi for a very long time and people that are started using programming languages and just got in touch with Delphi. So that was great as well.
Yeah, it was a great mix. There was I think besides you, Craig, and I, there was one guy, Doug, was using Delphi a lot frequently. And then the other guy, Brad, had used a few recent versions, but really wasn't primarily focused on Delphi.
Yeah.
And then there was a few other people that had used Delphi long ago. And then the majority of them were, like you said, really new to programming in general as well.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I think most of the people that were new to Delphi were like really intrigued and really getting a lot out of it. And they're like, this is cool.
Yeah. Can you do all these things with Delphi?
And I loved the question at the end from Brian. He's like, wait, so when you hit compile, what does it give you? And it's on Windows, it gives you an EXE. And it's like, and you don't have to distribute. It's like,
really? And the rest?
Oh my goodness.
No, that's it. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because I'm so used to that. It's obviously, but I realize that a lot of other tools, they don't give you an EXE. Or if
you
they
have to
do,
install a lot of other things.
Yeah, there's a lot of bundling and packaging and stuff you have to do with it.
Yeah. So that's one of the great things of Delphi.
Yeah. So overall, it's a real good event. Definitely makes us want to do more of these around the US.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the thing that if you have these live events, you always get a lot more out of that than just the digital ones. So you have the time to think of what you hear and discuss things and exchange ideas. And that's so much better than, although they are valuable, the online events, of course, it's simply easier. But if you get to a real live event, then you get the most out of it in the end. So I'm also really looking forward to the event we planned in June in the Netherlands.
Yeah, the Delphi Summit.
Yeah, the Delphi Summit. I'm really looking forward to it because, again, and that's something you want once you talk face to people there. That's the place where you get new ideas from, and really can help each other. So it was great to meet yesterday, and I'm looking forward to more of these meetings in the future.
And a few people there actually asked if we were going to start doing regular Delphi meetings here in Boise, which would be cool. So
absolutely.
I talked to Craig about that. I think that would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as physical versus digital, and I've done a lot of digital events. I don't know if I told you this. I was at a Comic-Con in Salt Lake City in line to meet a celebrity, and I don't remember which celebrity it was. And somebody comes up to me while I'm standing in line and goes, "Are you Jim McKeeth?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "I've learned so much from your videos on YouTube." And I'm like, "Wow."
Yeah.
That's the great thing about digital is that you reach a huge number of people.
Right. Absolutely.
But when I was in Denmark, it was interesting between sessions when I would talk to individual developers, hearing what they're doing and what they're trying to figure out and their specific questions, even if they weren't necessarily related to the things I was planning to talk about. That, for me as a speaker, was really interesting.
Yeah. You learn as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I learn as well.
Yeah.
And it helps me to see what people are doing and working on and stuff as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
So these live events are really great. Yeah. And you've been to the ones in Sao Paulo and Brazil as well. And it's also great to meet so many Delphi developers and talk to them about what they are doing and all the new stuff that they are creating. And you get a synergy of all these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed, there's both. It's good to have these videos and all the digital stuff to reach out to everyone. But still, I think there's a place for these physical meetings as well.
Yeah, the Brazil event, man, it was 700 people there last year.
700. Right?
So much excitement.
8 parallel tracks, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so much excitement, so much energy. And the last time I was there, which was the year before, I know a lot of times in the U.S. and Europe, the Delphi developers that show up to events tend to be the gray hair, older guys. Yeah. But there was a real good diversity of ages. It was still predominantly men, but there were a good number of women there as well.
Absolutely.
Of all ages. And it's exciting to see that growth and that excitement and that energy around Delphi there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And again, like last night, there was a lot of the guys that were newer to programming there that were like, this is exciting. And they were getting excited about it too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you can people excited about Delphi as long as they get exposed to it. And that's the thing. It's sometimes difficult to see that there's such a great tool out there, especially for the newer developers, because they look at all the new JavaScript languages and all the fun stuff, which if you look at Delphi, there's so many things that you can build with it. So if they get in touch with Delphi, they are as you yesterday, indeed. So that was great.
I think for general purpose stuff, Delphi is great. And then as Doug kept bringing up last night, that if you're going to go cross-platform, it's really the only game in town.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've looked at some other cross-platform frameworks, and there are the ones you can build cross-platform applications with other tools, but
it's not the same.
Not the same.
No. Yeah. But what do you think that we all could do to help the spread of Delphi for students, let's say, or to get more young people in the rest of the world outside of Brazil? Because Brazil is great, but we'd like to have this in Europe and in the US as well, right?
Yeah. Dr. Kevin
Bond.
Bond, yes. Yeah. Thank you. I'm like, I can't believe I just Kevin Bond just wrote that book on programming with Delphi that was specifically targeted to high school age students in the UK. Last night there was a conversation about should we start the Delphi group going again. And I think could be value in that, seeing more of these groups showing up again. It's interesting, over time we've seen these local physical events die off. Yeah. And I feel like after COVID, we're all missing that more, even though it's been dying off for a long time. So I think getting more of these local groups going, and I was seriously thinking if I was to do a new Delphi group, it might be fun to just be like, come learn Delphi. Yeah. And not be just a focus on the gray-haired guys coming in talking about stuff. It could be that too. Yeah. But I think trying to find ways to invite people to come and just learn and discover how much fun it is.
And as you do, I think, with the Code Camp, what is it called?
Yes.
So it's a bit broader than just Delphi, but still they get in touch with Delphi to see what you can do with it. So it's maybe not only that you have these Delphi specific or focused groups, but broader than that. So the more developer groups, where if you would show Delphi, they will get enthusiastic about it and they will love it.
Yeah.
So there are more opportunities to that as well.
And I've had a number of times that I've spoken at like non-Delphi specific audiences, and it's interesting. There's people that have seen Delphi but a long time ago and haven't used it much, and then they're like, oh yeah, Delphi is just for Windows database applications. No, it's good at that, but it does everything else too. And so the people that have used it a long time ago tend to be a little closed-minded, grumpy, right? And you have the people that are using it a lot and they're tend to be pretty enthusiastic, but the people that haven't ever seen it before, they start seeing it, they're like,
exactly,
wow, this is, why haven't I heard about this?
Yeah.
So they seem to be very excited to hear about it. I think, looking for opportunities that you can share Delphi to other groups of people. I'm a big fan of focusing on strengths, and some people are like, yeah, Delphi is the best for everything. It can do everything, but it's not the best for everything. But find places where you can say, this is Delphi's strengths, and then find places people talk about other things and be able to show how Delphi plays nicely.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, and that's what I talk to people a lot about. You don't have to have winners and losers. You can just say,
exactly.
And I think a good senior serious programmer has multiple tools in their tool belt, and they can say, this one, it makes sense. Let's use JavaScript. Let's use Python. Let's use Delphi. Whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
That came up a lot last night too, is people saying, can I use this with this library, or can I use it with this framework, or connect to this REST service or whatever? Yeah, that's how you do it.
You can, yeah.
One of the things I love about Delphi is that conceptually it seems like there's 3 layers of programming. Have I shown you this before? That you have, the Delphi has the components that you can drop down and where you just write a few lines of code and you do some pretty amazing stuff, right? And that's the top layer. That's where you're really productive and you get a lot done. And then you have this mid layer where you're writing code and maybe making your own classes and more units and interfaces and building stuff like that. And that's where you get a lot of your flexibility from. But then you have this bottom layer where it's like where you're going out and manually managing memory and writing inline assembly code and going out and grabbing APIs and touching the metal, as I like to say. A lot of times we see that different tools focus on different layers, right? And Python's really an integration tool. It's got a huge libraries, right? And it's great for calling all these libraries, and you get a lot of stuff done, but you're relying on these libraries that are written outside Python. Now, I know there's ways to use Python to make my Python modules, but generally speaking, they're written outside of Python. Or like Visual Basic back in the day, again, is like that top layer. Yeah.
Just a visual part, but if you have to do real stuff,
then you do it in something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you think like C and assembly, right? Is where I need to do serious stuff.
Yeah. Whereas with Delphi, you have all things.
All things
you could do,
and you can move easily between them and I love saying it because Delphi is written in Delphi.
Yeah.
If you don't like the way this works, rewrite it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just takes a little more code.
So you did see the US government published this list as well, right? For memory safe languages, and Delphi was there on the list, or got on the list. I don't know how exactly that, but it is there together with Object Pascal, I think. So it's broader than just Delphi, which is great. Together with all these other languages, where, as you just said, indeed, you have these specific languages for specific layers, whereas Delphi, I think, is the only one who does everything in there on that list.
I feel like, that Delphi is the full stack on that list. It's an outlier on the list, really, it feels like, in that regard. Because there's some compiled languages, but they're low level and don't have all the visual stuff. And there's other ones that are great visual, but they make it harder to do the lower level stuff. Yeah. And scripting languages that are pretty good, but again, middle. So you get Delphi really gives you all of it.
That was great to see it on the list as well. Yeah.
When they first came out and announced it, I'm like, man, people should be more aware of how Delphi is memory safe, and it felt like they're missing it. Everybody's like, oh, Rust, people should move to Rust.
Yeah.
But then when the NSA updated their list and added Delphi, I was like, I'm surprised, but I'm glad they got it on there, just because I don't feel like it gets enough attention.
Absolutely. Yeah.
was thinking about it, and Craig wrote a blog post last night. I shared it on LinkedIn. He actually some really good points, and we talked to him about that the other night as well.
Yes.
There's a number of things in Delphi that do really lead to memory safety.
Yeah.
Inline variable declarations, I think, is a big part of that as well, in that you can declare a variable inside a loop thing, and then once it's out of scope, once you're done with it, it's out of scope.
Exactly. And the memory safety was, I think, as well as using the strict typed way of using variables. So with Delphi, I think if you could do it memory unsafe if you wanted to. So if you just had a pointer and doing stuff with that, you're still in the risky part of it, let's say. So, but on the other hand, if you follow the guidelines or follow the usual structure you do with a Delphi application, it is completely memory safe, which is great.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't have memory leaks, which I don't think memory leaks are bad, but they're not a safety thing as much.
Yeah.
Just a performance thing.
Yeah.
But if it has the fast MM, you can have the memory leak reporting, which is very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had people that ask me to look at their code and like warnings and hints.
Yeah.
Why? Fix these things.
Fix these.
And it's so often it's these things that we know, and honestly, I'm guilty of it too. There's been a number of times I've ignored hints and warnings because I'm doing something quick.
Yeah.
And it's the things that we've learned, but we're like in too much of a hurry that we forget and we don't worry about.
Yeah. And in the end, it costs more time than if you do it the right way the first try still. But yeah, sometimes if you're in a hurry, then you can miss some of these hints and warnings. But that's the same thing. I think, by the way, the inline variables are great to at least solve some hints and warnings, because that's sometimes also what you get if you copy code from somewhere to somewhere else and you forget some declarations, etc. You get the hints or warnings if you use a variable outside of a scope or whatever. With that, it's a bit more safe. So I personally like the inline variable declarations. But indeed, when creating applications, it's so much easier if you solve these hints and warnings the right way. How many times we've seen applications that exist for maybe 20 or 30 years, and they work fine, by the way, but still they have a couple of hundreds of warnings and hints, and I think it's more difficult and more risky if you want to change these applications. And I can imagine why, if someone is completely overloaded and doesn't have the time to solve these things, why they are still in there. But in the end, it costs more time, because especially warnings, it is risky, and you make errors, and if you're not careful, then these warnings lead to real errors or logical errors in the application instead of the warnings in Delphi. As you go with the things you should always do when you develop Delphi applications, one of the things is indeed solve all the warnings and hints. That's so much easier to work with. Yeah.
I know that, like, when people are working with non-compiled languages, they have to really rely on unit tests, because otherwise you can have syntax errors in your code that you don't know are there until you exercise the code.
Exactly.
But unit tests are a good idea for everybody. Although I was reading something, I know Steve McConnell talks about this a lot, but there was something else I was reading about, like the idea of technical debt and the idea that you're paying interest, or the debt gets bigger the longer you don't address it, because as you have some problem, and if you're not loosely coupled, right, and then you start, and you're like, sometime I should make this more loosely coupled, but then as you're maintaining the code, then you keep compounding on that, and so over time, those technical debts, if you're not taking the time to pay them off, get worse and worse, and they can eventually foreclose on the application.
It'll grow exponentially, I think, because the application will get more complex, and so more complex to fix all these things and resolve the technical debt. So the longer you wait with it, the more it'll cost. Yeah. But yeah, I think we've all been there, right? Yeah. Sometimes life is difficult and you can't do everything right now, but still, if you are aware of all these things, and I think you should be when you do some coding with all these best practices and like clean coding, for example, or the solid principles or whatever. It all helps if you have a mental framework. Okay, I should do this, and sometimes you'll have to be a bit more maybe strict to yourself, I think, or not only to yourself but also to customers or managers, let's say, to say, okay, I am a professional. I want to deliver good code. Don't ask me to the things that I can't.
Mm-hmm.
The same as if you build a house and you hire someone, you want to have them do it the right way and not the fast way, right? Because in the end, you want to keep or to use that for a long time. And that's the same with software. If you rush and you forget all these best practices, in the end, you'll have a buggy software or something that is not really maintainable. Yeah. Be strict in what you can do and what you say, okay, I'm a professional. I can't deliver code that has warnings. I'm professional. I can't deliver code that's not loosely coupled or that has all these things.
Properly tested. I've seen studies that show that actually the return on investment for clean code and tested code, it doesn't take as much time. And we all like, oh yeah, I know that eventually unit tests will pay off, but everything I've seen where they've actually tried to quantize it shows that it pays off way quicker than you think it's going to. And I know you said that with Codolex, you had a ton of tests and you were like, oh, we need to make some changes. And you did, and it told you exactly where things were broken, and you went in and fixed those things.
Exactly. Yeah, we needed to change the complete storage system. But we had, I think, hundreds of tests specifically for that. Indeed, it feels so much more safer to then throw out the code that you don't need, rewrite it, and run the unit test. And you see exactly where you made some errors or where it's not completely good yet. So it's keeping you sane, I think, as well, if you have a lot of these unit tests. Absolutely.
I loved your comment, though, about if you're having a house built. And that's a really good analogy, right? If you're having a house built and you're like, I want this and something crazy. It's my house. I'm paying you to build it. And then later you're like, it collapses or something. And you go to the builder and you're like, what the heck? And he's like, you asked for that. I knew it was a bad idea, but I did it anyway because you asked for it. You'd be upset. So it makes sense. And honestly, if I'm ever in a meeting with whoever and they're like, I want to do this, I will say, and I don't think it's a good idea. I'll always say why I don't think it's a good idea. And I'll oftentimes be probably more passionate about it than I should be. And then I'll say, if you're in charge, right? I feel like it's my responsibility to share my knowledge about why I see an issue with this. But at the end of the day, if you're like, we're doing it anyway, I'll do it. And I tell that to other people I have working for me and with me is that if you disagree with something I'm saying, tell me. Yeah. I want to know. Absolutely. Even if you think it might work, but I have some concerns, tell me. Yeah. And then it's my responsibility if I say, okay, yep, you're right. That is a good point, but let's postpone that and pay that later, which sometimes we don't. But it's my responsibility. And then I have to be the one that's, if it doesn't go well, then it's on me as the person that made the decision. Yeah. I read something a while back about, actually just this morning I was watching a thing about Boeing with all the things that have been happening with their planes. And one of the things it was talking about was they moved the management from Seattle. So all the engineering and building was happening in Seattle. They moved the management to, I want to say Chicago, but somewhere else. And they literally said that they needed to be further away from the engineers so they could focus on the business and not be distracted by the building of the planes. And it just, wow, that seems really crazy to me. I understand that there are separate concerns, right, as far as like business profitability and stuff like that, but it seems like you should really be concerned about the actual execution, the building of the good stuff.
That is the important part of. So you started in January with GDK, right?
Yes, GDK. I started GDK USA in January. Yeah.
How's the experience so far?
it's this goes back to
and be honest.
the business, running a business or managing a business is different than what the business does.
Yep.
And I've been surprised how often it's like, oh, I need to send this customer invoice. Oh, to do that, I have to do this. Oh, to do that, I have to do this. And it's just like, so yeah, there's been a lot of just growing pains of starting up with a business and stuff.
Always is.
But I'm excited that you're here, and I'm excited to be getting more involved with just the GDK, everybody else in the company. And I've been to a few of the knowledge sessions, which have been really interesting. I love that.
Maybe you should explain what it is indeed here.
So I'll take a step back. When you first came to me and were talking to me about Codolex and stuff, I was like, oh, this is actually, so I don't know if I told you this, but when you were first showing me Codolex, I'm like, oh, it's another low code. Because I've seen so many of these that I just really feel like miss the mark, or they're too focused on, we can show people how powerful this is and lock them into our subscription model or something. And then you're showing me this, and it was like going through and ticking off all the objections I had in my mind. And I'm like, this is really cool. And then when I started talking to you more about GDK Software, and you told me about how you have offices in different places, including Brazil, because as we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of great, enthusiastic Delphi developers in Brazil. I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. And then you have your company days once a year, where you bring everybody together,
all together,
and your knowledge sessions and your Vivid days. Back to what we were just talking about, knowledge sessions. Is it once every couple of weeks, or what is the frequency of it?
At least once every month, but maybe more, even more.
Okay.
I'm not even sure. Yeah.
I was going to say, I know it's not weekly, but it feels like it's at least more than monthly.
Yeah.
That you
to be honest, I don't know. Maybe every 3-4 weeks. Depends on the schedule and when someone has time.
Yeah. But somebody inside GDK comes and shares something that they've learned and find interesting. And it's been good. It's great. I love, so we have, 30 developers now?
Yeah,
something like
that.
About
more, 30. Yeah, starting a couple more. Yeah.
From a business management point of view, that's about the number that having everybody in one meeting gets really expensive.
Yep. We know that. Yeah, and not only that, but we also have these. So these are the knowledge sessions, which will be 1-2 hours, depending a bit on the topic and the interaction. But we also have these research days, so everyone has that for 1 day a month, so they can just do whatever they want, basically, as long as it's somehow related to Delphi or to the company.
So what is it people typically do on research days?
It can be even like reading the clean code book, but also figuring out how Spring 4D works, or what you can do with the tools API in Delphi, so it's really broad, but it's as long as it contributes to the knowledge we have in the company. I think that is the most important part. And next to that is that all these topics that we have on the research days, they were presented in the knowledge sessions that we have. So it's not only researching for yourself, but also sharing this within the company. And I think that's one of the great parts of it, that we all learn together. And indeed, if you ask, the accountant sometimes says, okay, what does it all cost? The same with the company days. It is really expensive. But on the other hand, this is what we do. We are a knowledge company, so we have to invest a lot in building our knowledge on these topics, and invest indeed for the company days a lot in our people, because these are really the valuable part of GDK. So that is where we want to bring our focus on and to invest a lot. And that's what we do with these knowledge sessions is indeed as well. So yeah, you have 30 people, or they can work for customers at that time and make money. But still, for the long run, that's not the best choice. We need to invest a lot in these things, and that pays off. That it simply does.
Yeah. The knowledge day, or the knowledge days are big, but the company days, it's like a week long, once a year, right?
Yeah. So usually it is three days. Yeah, doing a lot of fun stuff, of course, and some Delphi-related things or company-related things. But it's a meetup indeed. So everyone from all the offices will come to the Netherlands or the UK or somewhere else, and we have a couple of fun days. So yeah, again, that costs a lot, but it adds really a lot of value to the company and to everyone. Yeah.
I found that when you get to know somebody, especially one-on-one, getting to know somebody is like the best way to do that. But when you get to know them, and I'm thinking about like when we have like the knowledge days where people are sharing something they know about, then later on when somebody's doing something and they're like, Spring for D, I don't know how to do this. Oh, wait, so-and-so just did a knowledge day session on that. Yep. You can just send them a message on Slack and get the answer. Exactly. Or if you're talking to them at the company day and you're like, you know what, they seem to understand this really well, and talk to them. And it makes each developer, because of that networking, being able to rely on each other and know who they are to rely on them, makes them, each developer, just so much better. So it is one of those things that, and I think we all know this, right? We all understand this, but we get, and honestly, it's good that the accountant says, hey, this is expensive. That's the accountant's job.
Exactly. It's his job.
And like, I've talked to other people that like say, oh, I talked to the lawyer and the lawyer said this is dangerous. I'm like, good, that's the lawyer's job to say this is dangerous. But then we need to be the one that says, I hear you, but I also understand the value as the manager, and say, let's make the investment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interestingly, after I announced I was working at GDK Software, I was surprised how many people that I knew in the community, other MVPs and stuff, that came to me and, oh man, GDK is great.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing you're there. I think you guys are going to do some good stuff. Very excited to have you there and stuff like that. Yeah, it's exciting. I'm really excited. I think that I know that other consulting companies I've looked at, and not all of them, but some other ones either are pretty small or they tend to outsource their consultants, which is a weird thing where they like, oh, we need this skill. Okay, we'll hire somebody. And then since actually working at GDK, I was contacted by their consulting company that wanted me to come in and consult for them on some Delphi work. But then when they found out GDK Software was not just me, they're like, oh, no, we don't want to do that. So.
Yeah. But that's the thing indeed. So we'd like to focus just on Delphi. And
yes,
as you were talking before, there are a lot of other great tools out there, other languages as well. But what we see is that if you have a clear goal and a clear focus, it helps. It compounds the knowledge you have about the language. And if you invest in this, as we do, then that certainly will pays back. And that's also something for the knowledge sessions that we have. So it's internal. So we do this for our own company, but we also always look at, okay, can we publish a blog post about this or create a YouTube video for our YouTube channel? Because we'd like to share the knowledge as well. So usually these blog posts end up in either one of my talks or on the website and on our knowledge base. So it's not only the internal knowledge gathering, but also sharing this to the community, which is great, I think. Yeah. And again, pays off or pays back. Yeah. And it's great to get started here in the US, by the way, because that's something also we see. So we started in the Netherlands, moved to the UK, a couple of years later started in Brazil, and now in the US. And it's always great to see what it does if you are physically in a country and have a presence or an office, because it's great. You talk a lot more to the developers in that country, and that's what we see in the Netherlands and the UK. And I hope to see this here as well, so that you get in touch with other Delphi developers, because in the end we are helping each other. I think that's a great thing. Like the Boise meeting we did yesterday, and we're planning to do more around the country here. I think if we all, as you said before, I think if we all are Delphi advocates, it helps the language, it helps the company, of course, the Embarcadero as well, but also the language, and everyone profits from that.
Actually, so like the Delphi Summit, I was talking to some of the speakers are consultants for other consulting companies, their own consulting companies. And someone had said, "Oh, is that going to be an issue?" And I was like, "I don't think so." And then we talked, and we're like, "No, I think it's a good thing."
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think obviously somebody could be mean-spirited but I don't think that's the case. And everybody I've worked with, and Craig was saying this last night, that he feels like the Delphi community is really very friendly and very helpful.
Yeah,
and I think that's, I agree. And so I was like, I don't think it's an issue having people that have other consulting companies there.
No.
Because conceivably, there could be a situation where GDK, someone comes to us and we're like, we just don't have the capacity right now, but here's somebody else that could, or we know they're specialized in a different area. And I think that cooperative spirit is always better.
Yeah.
Because very rarely are things zero-sum games. Everybody thinks like a zero-sum game. There are winners and losers. No. But that's not
I think it's the same. I don't know if you have this here in the US as well, but in the Netherlands, so if you have these car dealers or car companies who sell cars, back in the days, you had one at a place, and then somewhere completely else, you had another one. Now they are concentrated, so they're all next to each other. Whereas you think they are competing, but in the end, it helps. Because if someone thinks, okay, I want to buy a car, they're all next to each other. So it makes it easy to shop in one and then to the other, and they're friendly with each other. So they are. And that's the same with Delphi, I think, and with all the consulting companies that are, or even the freelancers or the Delphi developers. So you can help each other by promoting Delphi and by just working together instead of being real competitors.
Yes. Yeah. I saw a thing actually once where it explained mathematically that, and it said that if you imagine a beach and you have two ice cream vendors, right? They might first say, okay, let's evenly space on the beach, but then at some point someone's going to move a little closer so they have a little more territory or something, and the optimization is literally putting them right next to each other, and then they they can both serve half the beach, but they also are more likely to attract more people from greater distance because you have two choices once you get there.
Yeah. I think that's with the car dealers as well. Yeah. So no, it's great if we have competitors, or how do you call these?
Yeah.
At the Delphi Summit, presenting topics, which is great. I think because it's not, in the end, the Delphi Summit is not a GDK thing. It's Delphi focused. Yes, we are organizing this together with Embarcadero, together with Barnston, but still, the main focus is Delphi. So if a competitor has a nice topic to present, we are absolutely happy to have them. Mm-hmm. And actually, there are quite a lot, so that's great. Yeah. And the lineup is great. So if you see who is coming, then this will be a great event. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, actually. Oh, yeah. I want to see a physical event again. So a lot of excitement about that. Yeah.
And the place is great.
When I saw the video, I was like, oh, this looks really cool. This location.
Yeah. So in that sense, it's broader than just Delphi because you have these sim racing rigs. You can play games. There's a lot of fun things to do. You have an old museum as well where you can, and it's all working. So there is someone explaining about all these old PCs and the hardware that's in there, and you can play old games on these PCs, which is great. So it's indeed, yes, it's Delphi focused for the sessions, but outside of that, you'll have a lot of fun things to do as well. Yeah.
One of the things last night when you were talking about Codolex that I was thinking about is a lot, and it's the same thing with Delphi. A lot of times with Delphi, we talk about that you're more productive, right? Developers get things done quicker, which is true. And Codolex does that as well. But I believe that both Delphi and Codolex also have the secondary thing, which I think is a much bigger deal, is that it makes it easier to maintain.
Yes.
Because Delphi does this, the language is easy to read. Because you have to write less code to do things, then there's less code to maintain. And the way, I think the way your program ends up being structured, granted, some people do the RAD approach where they put all the code in the GUI.
You can make a mess if you want.
You can make a mess.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of programs that were huge and it was all in one form with 50 tabs, probably not exaggerating. Honestly, they worked.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to be critical of that, but I do think that if you use like frames and units and classes and interfaces and stuff like that, a lot of the best practices Delphi provides, it makes your code more maintainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then I think that's really the thing about Codolex too, because some things with Codolex, yeah, it does make you more productive, but other things, click add variable, that's not necessarily faster than doing it in code. But at the end of the day, it lets you bring in an architect to do this, and then it becomes more maintainable.
Yeah, and more visible.
Yes.
What the business logic does, indeed. So you have a lot more visibility on the structure of the application. And indeed, as you said, with these some of the smaller activities or building blocks, it's not really making a difference. But if you have the bigger ones, like the REST operations or other things, then it'll make a huge difference. Because then what is that you have the visual business logic. And it's easy to understand even if you haven't looked at it for a long time and going back to it. And not also for a developer, but also for a consultant, for example, who can just have a look at that and understand exactly what it does. So he doesn't have to know the source code or can read source code, but you can see visually what it does. And it makes it so much easier to find your way around. So if you have a really large application built in Codolex, and you're working with data or databases, all these things that that help you navigate, like finding where an entity is used or where a database table is used or where a flow is used, for example, saves you a lot of time, but gives you also a good overview in your head and a mental image of what the application does, much more than if you just look at source code. Mm-hmm. So that helps. That helps too, yeah. And Delphi is already great in a lot of things, but for the visual business logic part, Codolex can really make a difference, as we see within a company. We think it's really a game changer, yeah.
Yeah, I love also, one of the things that we all love about Delphi was how the component module, how easy it was to make components.
Yeah.
And so Codolex, not only can you make the activities to add to it, like you showed with the horse server, but also the fact you can then take a flow and reuse it in another flow.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's I've heard it like in teaching things called like subprograms, and that's just functions and procedures and classes, which we're familiar with in writing code. But because Codolex, that makes that so easy to encapsulate that and then reuse it and then be able to then move between the things that you need to. It really, again, like I said, when you're going through and showing this, I'm like, oh no, it does that. Oh, it does that. Oh, wow. Okay. It just really, it's clear that it's something you've thought about a lot. And I think also I love the way that with GDK using it is that you can do work for somebody and then give them the code that Codolex generated. They would have that code.
Yep.
They don't have to buy a Codolex license to be able to build the application.
Exactly.
And so it makes it's not just something that you're making for other people to use. It's something you're making for your team to use.
Absolutely, yeah.
And your team does a lot of development, a lot of business logic. And yeah.
It helps. And in the end, and I think that's the beauty of it, in the end, you get source code. Mm-hmm. So you don't have this vendor lock-in that you have with other low-code tools that are out there, mm-hmm. let alone that they're not integrated with Delphi. But even that, then we want to have the source code for ourselves as well, as you said. And I think that is the beauty of Codolex, that you can build your applications visually, but you still can see what happens under the hood. So you get the source code, you get a preview of the source code, but you also get the actual source code that gets compiled. In terms of speed as well, it's Delphi code, so it's fast. So it's not interpreted or anything like that. It's building these visual applications, but then going back to the source code, and the source code gets compiled. You'll end up with the same applications, the same speed, the same beauty of Delphi code, but built another way or designed another way using these flows. And that's great, yeah.
The one thing that came up last night was the conversation. Someone asked about can you take existing code and reverse engine into a Codolex flow, which comes up a lot. And then someone else commented, it was interesting. It was like one of the Delphi developers was like, I want to be able to take my Delphi code and turn it into Codolex. And then one of the guys on the other side of the room that was new to Delphi was saying that it was using something else and saying that every time you try to do that in any place else you've seen it, it always goes terribly.
Yeah, exactly.
And which
it's not a thing that you want to do.
Yeah, it seems like a good idea until you go to do it, and
yes.
then you're like, no, that was bad.
Not really. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, it's a fun development. It's been the idea is been around for quite a long time, but it's great that it's now out there and that we use it, but that's also possible for other developers to use. So you can download it and play around with it. It's great. Yeah.
And it's interesting because GDK Software does a lot of Delphi development. That Codolex both makes GDK developers more productive, easier to maintain applications, and the fact that it's also packaged up to be used externally is great, right? I've seen a lot of great tools that are only ever designed for in-house use.
Yeah.
And it's, it'd be great if this was made available to everybody else. Usually there's a lot of extra steps you have to go through to make it available to other people because it's very focused on one thing. Yeah. Or other tools I see that are made for other people, but they're never used by the people that are making it. Yeah. And that always seems to be go poorly to me. Yeah. So I feel like it's doing both there, and that's great. You can't imagine a situation where no one's going to use Codolex outside GDK, but even if it was just used inside GDK, it would still be a win. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. It's worth the investment.
Yep.
But again, that comes back to sharing things that we like. It's great that other developers can contribute to it as well, because we made it flexible, so you can even build your own activities, your own building blocks, and integrate. And in the future, we'd like to have a way to exchange all these things, because in the end, if you created a great new building block, it would be great if you can share this with other developers, and then we all benefit from it. If you think long term, that's the ideal goal, to have a lot of these building blocks, which has a lot of logic in it as well, and really speed up the development. And I think we're getting there. So we are now at a point that other developers are using Codolex to build these new building blocks and spreading them, and that's the way to go.
I always use that like as a litmus test, right? If the people that are in the know get excited, okay, that's one thing. But then when you show it to somebody else and they're like, oh, and then they like come up with some idea that you're like hadn't thought about and they're excited about it, you're like, that's a good indicator that like, okay, this is a good idea.
Absolutely.
And then when they start using it and start getting more excited about it, yeah.
So one of the great things of Codolex is that you can start using it right now. So it is free to use. So you can simply download it, play around with it, build your applications with it, and we generate even the source code for you. You can absolutely use it for everything you want. And the reason why we do this is that we really want other developers to get involved in Codolex and start building these building blocks as well. That's why we made it free to use. Mm-hmm. We use it internally, but we'd love to have other developers use it as well. And of course, we can help with the implementation, because that is what we do. So we are still the Delphi consultants. So we can help with the implementation or even build things for you specifically, like specific building blocks. But it would be great for every Delphi developer to use Codolex with their Delphi development. And we see, so if we talk about the future of Codolex, we not only see that there will be perhaps paid components or paid building blocks that are somewhat bigger, made specifically, and these are being paid components. But also that we have some sort of marketplace where you can exchange all these components and maybe even make a profit of it. But still, we are thinking of the exact things we want to do with that. But a great way is that you can start using it right away and implement it in your own applications without any extra cost. Yeah. So
I think
why not?
It's good to have this camp at the meeting last night. People talked about the barrier to entry for Delphi, and I think it's great to have Codolex with a low barrier to entry. Right? It's like let's get started with it. But then I also think I don't see anything wrong with having a paid versions or things that do generate money for us. And I talk to a lot of Delphi developers that are excited. They're like, I don't know I'm going to use this new version of Delphi, but I'm going to buy it anyway because I believe in the program and they want to help. So I think it's finding that balance where there's a low barrier to entry, but you want to also give people the opportunity to say, I believe in this, I want to support this, and invest in it, really. Yeah. Whether it be they're investing in it by making activities and components for it, or they're investing in it by buying a premium subscription or whatever that looks like, then I think that's the ideal situation.
Absolutely.
Really, to do that. Yeah, that's exciting. I think I can see a lot of cool stuff with Codolex.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we see that there's a lot of interest in this as well. So I don't count the downloads, but people are interested in these kind of tools where they can build applications even faster than they do with Delphi, and also be in control of what is generated and have all the source code. And now that it's free to use, I expect this to be even bigger. Yeah.
So this came up during the Delphi conversation though, with the Codolex. The stuff is generated as JSON.
Yes.
So then it can all be put in source control. So actually, what is I know I've seen this, but I can't remember. Is it all, the whole thing one JSON file, or is it a collection of JSON files like Delphi project would be?
Exactly, yeah. So it's structured like Delphi would be. So you have your main Codolex project file, which is a JSON file. But then for every module and for every flow and data modules, you have separate JSON files, which makes it easier to use it with source code control. Right. Because you don't want to have one big JSON file, because if it then merging would be a challenge, let's say.
Yes.
So these are all separate JSON files, which you can use to check in your version control system. Although we always advise to also check in the source code, because comparing source code in if you have a pull request and you want to compare what's changed, still source code comparison would be easier than JSON comparison.
Right, because you'd be looking at two JSON files.
Yeah, exactly.
And you probably could discern it, but the Delphi code's probably going to make more sense to our brains.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Although that is some idea as well, is that in the future maybe you not only would see two JSON files, but maybe the flows. So you could have
like a plugin that renders
exactly. So this is the old flow, this is the new flow, so this is changed. And combined with source code, you'll have a fairly good idea of what is changed. Yeah.
Crazy idea, but I bet you, because you said you just switched it to Skia for the rendering, so you could export that as an SVG, which would be a fairly small file.
Yes. Yeah.
And I bet you most things already render SVGs.
Yeah, so that would be possible to do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of ideas as well. We have a lot of things on the roadmap, but a lot of these kind of ideas as well.
It's one of those things that it sparks other ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sign of a good, useful tool, right? Is that you can see it's useful for this purpose, but then you're like, oh, but we can do this, we can do this, we can do this.
Yeah. So the trick is, or the difficulty is to limit yourself indeed, because you want to do everything. So there are so many good ideas, and that's what we hear back from users as well. So you'll have to be very careful not to run after every good idea, but to pick things and to make it really good. It is great, yeah.
I kind of always say that's the curse of being a software developer, is that you start seeing like, I can write a program to do this, I can write a program to do this, I can write a program to this, and you start writing a program and you're like, I could turn this functionality here, I could turn this into something reusable, and then I could make it a component, and I could put it up online for other people to use. Yeah. And so you have to find the balance, right, of not over-engineering everything, but at the same time, you want to do the right amount of over-engineering that is, or engineering that's going to be maintainable and stuff as well, the loosely coupling and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a 3D? Have you ever done any 3D printing?
Nope.
So I got a 3D printer a while back, and that was the thing with that is it's like you get it and you're like, I could print anything. And it's, what am I going to print?
Yeah. sometimes it's good to have less options.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about using Canva versus using something like Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Adobe Illustrator, I'm not an expert at it, but it gives you the ability to do whatever you want to do. It's very flexible.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can spend way too much time on things that you could just get done in Canva. And it's not exactly what I had in mind, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, exactly. And faster than you would otherwise.
Exactly.
And I think that's with Codolex as well, because you can write all your own code. With Codolex, we have a fixed amount of available components. In theory, you're limited, but it helps in getting things done faster, because you have to pick from whatever is available. And yes, you could create your own activities or your own building blocks, but still, the way that it's structured is that you have this limited amount of functionality to choose from, which makes it faster to do things, to do actual things. Because yes, with source code, if you just would type in everything, you could over-engineer things, or you could make it as big as possible. With Codolex, you have a fixed set, and that helps.
The thing I love about Codolex is you have the code snippets
as
well.
So you could.
The great thing I see about that is that it gives you that opportunity to say, okay, how can I express this in Codolex? And then you can say, I can't express this in Codolex, I can do a code snippet. But then I feel like that gives you an opportunity to pause and say, is this the right way? If every Codolex flow is just a code snippet, you're probably not designing it right.
Exactly.
And can you take a step back? Is there a different way to design this that makes more sense, that allows it to be more visible what you're doing?
Yeah. A code snippet is sort of a warning sign.
Yes.
That you think, okay, should I really use a code snippet, or can I design this in some sort of other way, a better way, to make it reusable and to use indeed this within other flows or in the other parts of the application. So, yeah, indeed, you're completely right. Code snippet you can use, but yeah, you'll have to be very careful in using too much code snippets, because otherwise you will end up with too much source code that you write yourself again, and not doing it the visual way, the faster way. Yeah.
I saw this thing a while back about, I think they called it code bubbles or something, which was this idea of taking, going away from this flat text file approach to software, and instead looking at like classes and functions as bubbles. And then you would see then connections between the bubbles, how they're connected in the application. It's an interesting idea, but this kind of goes back to the conversation we had about, can you reverse engineer code into a visual representation? And that usually doesn't go well. So I think that Codolex does that. It gives you this ability to say, I want to visually see what's going on. I want to understand it better. Yeah. While also giving you not a lot of other tools I've seen in the past that try and focus on the visual don't ever give you a good forward engineering approach to go to the code. So the fact that Codolex does that is great. So we did the Delphi event and want to do a travel around the U.S., see some more people in different cities. Yeah. So we're putting together a survey so people can come and let us know where they'd like to see us. And we're trying to figure out the best way to do that so that we can. It's like the Delphi Summit is that we believe in this, right? We see that benefiting the community, connecting with people in the community, and helping people really is what it comes down to. Is we believe is going to have a positive that we can pay off in the long run. Yeah. That we can justify it to the accountants at the end of the day. But so we want to maximize where we're at so that we go places that we're going to see the most people. And we want to talk to both the people that are existing Delphi developers and then people that maybe just want to learn about Delphi. So trying to figure out where people are at and how concentrated is going to be a big step in that. So
that would be great. Yeah.
People can fill out that survey, which we'll have linked somewhere, I'm sure. And then I guess in Brazil, I'm going to be down in Brazil and do a little bit of visiting and presentation there. We'll see how that goes. It should be fun. My Portuguese isn't great, so I'm not sure how that's going to go yet.
Well,
but it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Absolutely.
Cool.
All right. Well, it was fun to have a chat about this and about GDK.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh, actually, before we go, since this is the first time you've been in the United States,
it is.
Is there anything that's really cool or that's really crazy so far for you?
Well, the thing that it is really cool to be here. and to meet everyone. I think one of the first thing I saw is that everyone is so friendly. That is when I came in through customs. They were maybe it's the area here where we are. I don't know, but everyone is really friendly and really helpful if you're the first time here. So that is great. One other thing, the cars, but that's the thing around here. They're a bit bigger than in the Netherlands.
And a lot more trucks.
Yes. Exactly. But now it's great to be here and to meet you, to meet the other developers. Yeah, I've been to a lot of countries, but never to the US, strangely enough. So it's great to check that box and be here for a while.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people agree Boise's a pretty friendly area.
Oh, yeah.
And then we went and saw, I think this is crazy cool, but there's 2 Anne Frank memorials in the world.
Yeah.
One in the Netherlands, and the other one's here in Boise.
Yeah. Which is great, but why Boise? Yeah.
Yeah,
we're not sure yet. Huh?
Why it was in Boise.
Yeah.
Like I said to you, that it was the interesting to me when I found out was just Boise was the only one. Is originally I thought that there was one in every city. Because I read the Anne Frank diary and I was like, oh yeah, of course you're going to have an Anne Frank memorial because that's an important thing to be aware of. And it's just
the only one just in Boise.
Boise.
Yeah.
Now, if there may be one someplace else we're not aware of. I did look, I didn't see it, but so if there is, let us know.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to visit that one too now, right?
Yeah, exactly. We should
make a list all the Anne Frank spots.
Hey, it's me, Future Jim, back here again at the end of the podcast. Just wanted to say thanks for watching this. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you enjoyed this, let us know. We'd love to make some more. Probably not going to have both Marco and I in the same room together just because travel is long and expensive. But there will be times that we all do travel and run into each other. And we'd love to also just interview other people in the community and other developers and experts and talk to people in person and online. So let us know. I guess on YouTube, like and subscribe, and let us know what you think. Also, there's still time to register for Delphi Summit coming up. It's about a month away now, so delphisummit.com is the website. Be sure you go out there and sign up. Again, we'd love to make this a regular thing, so if you can go, join us. If you can't, tell your friends. Spread the word. Maybe someone else would be interested in going and hasn't heard about it yet. So spread the word and let us know that if you're interested in more content like this and in more in-person events. Talk to you later.